Thank you for joining us and welcome to Art and Music After Hours at the Kimball. I'm Nancy Edwards, Curator of European Art and Head of Academic Services. Art and Music After Hours pairs works of art from the Kimball Art Museum with music by composers originating from the same country or region. Today's program features the Card Sharps, painted by the northern Italian artist Caravaggio around 1595, and the work of the composer Mario Castelnuovo Tedesco, who was born in Florence in 1895, performed by classical guitarist Christopher McGuire. We hope you enjoy the program. I'm always amazed by how you're immediately reeled in by this painting. No matter where you place it in the gallery, you just can't take your eyes off it. And no matter where your eye enters this painting, you start to be involved with this story, these card players, and in fact, you almost participate in this game, partly because he's brought these figures so close to us at this table, right there at the edge. So I'm drawn first by this dewy complexioned young man who's dressed to the hilt. He's wearing a beautiful cut velvet burgundy doublet with satin stripes. He has an embroidered collar. He has a fancy hat with a feather, and he's looking intently at those cards. And then my eye reels up through the diagonal of that striped sleeve to this man who's really not so subtly looking at his cards and gesturing to what would appear to be his accomplice there on the right. So my eye travels and we look, across the painting. He's looking intently at this innocent young man. And then I travel down the stripes of his doublet and see that he's pulling out some cards that he's hidden in his waistband behind him. So we know what's happening. There's this game, and this poor dupe is being cheated by these young men. So we're witnesses and we're accomplices, and we're in on all this action. It's painted so beautifully. There are a number of things going on. There's this light that also catches the action, and it falls within this tight space. We look down and also see this dagger that catches my eye, and we wonder what's going to happen next in this story, whether he'll be duped to the end or whether violence will erupt. And the dagger reminds me of Caravaggio himself and his character, and what Rome was like at the time that this was painted. We know a little bit about Caravaggio from some early biographies, but most of what we know about him can glean actually comes from court records, because he was in trouble all the time. He was arrested some 11 times, and one of those arrest records has a little drawing in it, and it shows that he was stopped because he was carrying a sword and a dagger, and swords were the prerogative of high-placed people. You had to have a permit, which of course he didn't have. And this particular dagger actually is called a stiletto. It was a really dangerous weapon, very sharp. Wouldn't have been used for duels and parrying, but for more nefarious purposes. So we know right away, I mean, if this young man had been a little bit, had his wits about him and just looked at these characters, he might have thought twice before getting in a game with them. Look at the way they're dressed. I mean, he's very sort of demure and elegant in this aubergine velvet doublet that he's wearing, but the others are much more gaudy and sort of mismatched. And although these are expensive fabrics, they don't entirely go together, which makes us think that they were maybe picked up, they were won at cards or picked up in the secondhand shop. And they also identify them as a particular type that was known as a bravo or a soldier of fortune. So these were people who went around Rome and got into a lot of mischief, into trouble. They went to taverns and they played at cards and other games, and they often cheated. Now, Caravaggio himself, his name actually comes from the town of Caravaggio in Lombardy, where his family was from. He was born in Milan, spent time there, and when he was a young man, probably because he got into trouble, he went to Rome, and Rome was the place to be to really seek your fortune. If you wanted to make your mark as a painter, you came from all over the peninsula of Italy and even from the north to get those important commissions. And it was a hard scrabble to be able to get the commissions there. What we know about Caravaggio in the beginning is that he was known as a really good copyist. So he might copy other people's paintings. He also did heads of saints. He did still life paintings. He worked in other studios, and he went from place to place. He made some friends. He had a friend, Prospero Orsi, who was well-placed. His sister married into aristocratic families. And through him, and actually through a picture dealer who sold some of Caravaggio's paintings, he seems to have met Cardinal del Monte, who was one of the most important clerics of the time, who was a great picture collector. And we know that Cardinal del Monte was the first owner of this picture. It was a new kind of painting. This was one of the paintings where Caravaggio really made his mark. He attracted a lot of attention, both good and bad. All the other young painters wanted to imitate it. And the things that they looked at that were really special about it were, first, its realism. And I pointed out how he was able to paint so beautifully the costumes of these figures. I mean, look at this apricot feather and the white feather behind it, and the different textures. He was a good colorist. He makes us think that we're in the tavern, and this was something that perhaps Caravaggio witnessed during that period. So there was his realism, and he was criticized for that. They said all he could do was just put someone down and paint what he saw in front of him. That he couldn't invent anything. It's not quite true, but he did work differently than the academic painters. The other thing that they caught on to was his particular kind of light that falls and spotlights the figures. Later in his career, the light becomes more extreme in terms of darks and lights and how they work. But even here, he's using the light to draw our eye to certain points and also to say certain things about these figures. The light falls on this young innocent who represents the good boy before his fall. We know it's not going to end well. And the more nefarious character in the background is literally cloaked in darkness. So this is a technique that other artists also imitated, as well as this new kind of subject. It's kind of a low life. It's what we call a genre subject that tells a scene of everyday life, and actually it also tells a moral. You know, it's a little bit more like that. It's a fun subject, and we can see how Cardinal del Monte, who, despite the fact that he was a man of the cloth, liked to play cards. He liked to gamble, he liked music, and the next thing that we know, that Cardinal del Monte invited him to live in his palace and to work for him, and also helped to recommend him to paint more important pictures, because what you really wanted to paint were religious pictures, many figured pictures, altarpieces and other works for the important churches of the time. And so the next phase in Caravaggio's career included all those important altarpieces right near the palace. Caravaggio's painting of the card sharps was immensely popular. It was copied even in his own time and for centuries thereafter. So there are many copies. There are many good copies, there are many bad copies. You can still find them coming up at auction. And the painting, after it stayed a while in Cardinal del Monte's palaces, he had several of them, it was sold to another cleric. It was sold to the important papal Barberini family. Several centuries later, at the end of the 19th century, it disappeared into a branch of that family in Paris. It was sold, and it was lost sight of for many decades. So there were only these copies, and there was notice of a painting that was supposed to be very good, and the director of the Kimball at the time, Ted Pillsbury, went to look at it in Switzerland and recognized its quality. It was taken and it was cleaned. He had the option to purchase it for the museum. And during the relining, they looked at the back of the painting, and sure enough, there was the seal of Cardinal del Monte. So even if its quality couldn't convince you, there was proof in the pudding that actually this was owned by the Cardinal. So we're tremendously fortunate to have this work in our collection. It's a painting, as I said before, that it seems so real. It seems to be of Caravaggio's time, but we're reminded that it's staged. It's actually staged, and this subject goes back to other sources, like the prodigal son. It was also performed card games and cheats and charlatans by the Commedia dell'arte, and the Bravo, the soldier of fortune, was a character in the Commedia dell'arte. So Caravaggio was drawing actually from many different sources, and he was looking at other painters like the Venetians and Giorgione and so on, to come up with something that was unique, it was new, it was exciting, it caught on like wildfire, and it also, to this day, has this ability to imitate so convincingly that we're conned by its illusionism, and we're drawn into this in a way Caravaggio has the last to say in this marvelous work of art. And now it's my pleasure to turn the musical segment of our program over to Christopher McGuire.
This piece is a little study in how to play the melody and bring it out while playing an accompaniment at the same time, but it's also just such a beautiful little piece that I wanted to play it for you. Here's another little study by Caravaggio that most of my students play, but it also is just really fun and beautiful. Hello, I'm so happy that you're joining us for Art and Music After Hours here at the beautiful Kimball Museum. We're going to play the Vivaldi Concerto in D major instead of the Tedesco. It's an arrangement by a friend of mine named Stanley Yates, and I'm playing it with another friend of mine, Brian Burns. We hope you enjoy it. This next piece is called Se io m'accorgo, and it's an old Italian lute song, and we think it might be one of the first pieces of lute music that was actually written down. The original lyrics are about an older man remembering his first love, and it's really beautiful. It starts with a typical introduction, like a lot of Renaissance music. But the beautiful part is when the man sings and then the woman that he remembers sings, and then their voices entwine in this beautiful two-part song that ends the first time in a beautiful resonant triad, and then the next time it kind of ends in a question and then ends in a triad. But it's a conversation between the older man and the younger woman that he remembers from his past.
Thank you once again for joining Art and Music After Hours. We hope to see you again soon.